What's up, guys? Welcome back to Good Bro, Bad Bro. On this podcast, we discuss male self-improvement, dating, social skills, entrepreneurship, business, and much more. Today, I'm going to be joined by a true Renaissance man, Weston Boucher. He is an actor, model, fitness expert, photographer, and he also sings. This guy does pretty much everything. The guy truly is a jack of all trades. We're going to break down all of the things that he's done over the last 20 years in order to achieve the level of success he has and inspire you guys to use the same strategies to get similar results. So before we get started, make sure you hit that like button, drop a comment for the algorithm, and enjoy the video.
And I'm feeling good. I like a dude who fucks his life up and then gets it back together with purpose.
Weston, what's going on, man?
I'm good, man. Everything's good. Happy to connect with you. It's a pleasure. I've checked out your channel for a bit now, and I'm so impressed that you started this podcast. Like, I did a deep dive, and I'm so impressed you started this podcast because you were curious about men's self-improvement. So I'm like, when you invited me, I'm like, great, man. Like, I love to connect with someone like you. We could just shoot the shit and talk about whatever.
I actually saw you on one of my favorite channels, First Man.
No way.
And very similar themes. I never thought I'd actually get into the male self-improvement space, but it was something that I realized, like, as I got older, there's a massive demand for, especially nowadays. And I feel like you're probably the same way. You probably got into this accidentally, but you're like, man, this is very fulfilling. And, tell me about your journey into this space.
That's actually exactly how it happened. It was unintentional, but I'm happy to be here. And the response from guys has been awesome. But I did start my YouTube channel about how to get in the modeling industries. I had done that for about a decade, and guys were super curious about that. Started the channel with that, saw a little bit of progress, but guys were super, super interested in what I learned from the industry, more so to apply to the average guy, whether it was like health and fitness, skincare, hair care, grooming, men's mental health. I mean, those things, it was just like guys were going crazy for that. And they weren't as interested about being like, oh, I want to go be a model, but some do. And I do consults with that. And I did like an e-guide about how to get in the industry, but I knew I had to shift because I was just connecting with more people. And that was really satisfying and rewarding to just like take whatever I learned from great people and pass it on, Yeah,
that's one of the things that you learn either as you age or like, on the good end of a mushroom trip that, there's a certain point where life is no longer about you. It's about everybody else. And then you go, whoa, like, I have to kind of do not necessarily what I want to do, but more so like what helps everybody else. And I guess some people will disagree with that, but maybe it's just because I'm Canadian and I'm so nice. But that's kind of like the transition I went through, man.
Yeah, once you get over yourself, everything gets even better. When you check your ego at the door and you just don't care, you don't take yourself as seriously, it really opens up a lot, right? Like, it disarms people when you can be humble and you can just listen to people and connect and really genuinely want to know what's going on in their life or how you could help them or you could learn from them. I mean, it's just, a lot of people have walls up, including myself over time, and life just does what it wants. Like, you can plan or whatever, but it'll humble you in all the best ways, in my opinion. And I'm just all about refinement over time when I look back and just trying to do one step forward each time.
So before we get into your origin story, just give a quick rundown on what you do, because, when I was making notes for the episode, I'm like, man, this guy does like 8 different things, bro. Like,
yeah, I'll be 43 in September, and it's like every decade I kind of got bored with something, or I just had an opportunity show up, but it's mostly been in the creative realm. But I would say right now my biggest focus is the men's self-improvement, because the YouTube channel and my menswear line was like blossomed from that. So that takes up a majority of my time right now. Modeling is a little bit more on pause because of those commitments. But I did kind of start early on by getting in the creative field in the video game industry. I worked for Midway Games, if you know Mortal Kombat. I worked on that game and was in that industry for about 7 years. So I started off right off the bat, like with creative stuff. So that kind of always went that way. And in the background, I was playing music professionally, and I'd done that before that. So I played in bands for a really long time, and I was trying to make that work, working with producers and stuff. And it was just, it's hard, and left Midway after, like I said, 7 years, bought a camera, went overseas, and I started doing photography. And then I did that for about 13 years. And then that's how I got connected into modeling, because I had a friend who was shooting a casting for Harley Davidson. Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey, you have tattoos and you ride motorcycles. You want to try this? I was like, I guess. And the rest was history. Like, I got in the modeling industry, another 10 years. And then that is what blossomed the YouTube channel that then
Damn.
turned into the menswear line. So it's
So,
just a wild ride.
so what were you doing for the video game company? Like you were programming games or?
I think I was just turning 20 when I got hired there, and I was going to a creative arts college, and I was trying to learn 3D modeling, and it was getting really hard. But on the way to that college, on the same street was Midway Games, and I was like, wait a minute. I grew up playing Mortal Kombat. It was one of my favorite games. I went in there.
Yeah.
The QA test manager was there. He's like, hey, you want a tour? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And then he's all, we are hiring. So I left that school and I immediately started from the ground level in QA. So I was testing for probably a solid 5 years, worked my way up into production, was an assistant producer, and then I started actually working on the games from there for a couple of years.
Dude,
that's how that happened.
dude, that's crazy, man. Okay, you ever seen Grandma's Boy?
Oh yeah, dude, that movie is so accurate. JP is the funniest character because I work with guys like that, so they did their research on that one.
Dude, when I watched that movie, I realized, like, man, I don't ever want to be like JP, Because
I know, right?
when you're younger and you got, like, I guess, kind of talents or artistic tendency, I think it's easy to fall into, like, that super creative genius model where, like, I guess what it's important as a man, it's very important to be well-rounded. And one of the things that I learned as I got older was, like, pretty earth-shattering pill at the time to swallow, but, like, after you travel to a bunch of third world countries and you hear all the stories from people that live in, like, less fortunate conditions, they don't even have the opportunity to consider art as, like, a hobby, let alone like a career, right?
Oh, for real.
So it really humbled me, and it made me go on one end like, hey, I want to do all these artistic things. I love, like, acting and filmmaking, but also, like, it is totally a privilege, I guess, to be able to do that. And at the end of the day, like, am I saving the world by making art? Right. So I got in my own head for that for a while. But back to what you were saying, that's very interesting. You started in that. And then I guess like 27, 28, you just decided to hop into photography.
Yeah, I was married at the time, and I had left Midway because they were getting bought out by Warner Brothers. So they were going to give me a severance package, or I could stay without job security. So I took the severance package just in case. That gave me a little bit of money to kind of buy equipment, but I had gone on a trip to Europe, like I said, and shot some photos. And then my wife at the time had been going to school for photography. So we were laying in bed one night and she's like, do you want to try photography as a possibility? Maybe we'll start shooting some weddings or something. And then we started doing that, and it just steamrolled. I kind of just, if I commit to anything, like, I want to dive all in and learn it all and just learn from people. So that scaled it fast because I just kind of reached out to mentors and stuff, so it wasn't really my doing as much as just initiative, I guess.
You got into the creative space doing photography, and then at some point a couple years later, you just randomly stumbled into shooting a Harley Davidson ad. At this point, like, how old were you?
Well, the photography went on for a good, like, 12, 13 years. And then a colleague of mine that shoots, he was shooting the casting for Harley Davidson. And at that point, I was getting burned out on photography. It was just, the business model is really tough. We were making good money, but take home pay was still rough. Any business you have in Southern California is hard, honestly. But I gave it a shot, and then I started talking to models on set. I mean, literally riding all these prototype Harley Davidson bikes, and there's this huge crew on set. And so it was really exciting, right? And I was instantly hooked because it was really interesting. I love riding motorcycles in general. And then I was like, well, what if I just go to LA and I'll have my wife at the time, she's a photographer, shoot some photos of me, and I'll go up there and meet with some agencies, and maybe something will happen. And I went to 5 different ones, and it was really scary, and there was a lot of rejection because I didn't know what I was doing. And then one of them saw something in me and signed me, and then I went on to sign with more and more and more, and then I started just doing that full time. It's a pretty wild ride for sure, that industry.
Yeah, dude, that's nuts. So, like, I think one of the biggest things that I feel the pressure on myself, but also, like, younger men feel the pressure on themselves, is that by the certain age, they haven't become successful yet, or they haven't achieved the goals, and they see other people that age and they go, wow, like, that person, in hindsight, when they look back on all the things, you must, like, if I looked at your backstory in hindsight, I'm like, wow, Weston's a genius, walked into a video game agency, started taking photos. Now he's a model and all this. What age were you when you really felt like, wow, this is really starting to pick up, I'm doing good? And especially because one of the things that, Chris talks about as well is the male advantage in your 30s. That's when life really starts.
Right.
So, I'm really excited. I'm still a few years away from my 30s, but
nice.
That's where I'm looking forward to getting to. So, like, what were your 30s like, and how old were you when you transitioned into modeling?
I think I was 32 when I started modeling. So it was interesting because my perception was like, why are they interested in some old guy? And here I am 42 now, and I'm still with 9 agencies worldwide. And there's tons of guys that are full gray that crush it, So it was a blessing for sure. But that's kind of when I transitioned. And I don't know, the modeling is just, it's so much. Like the risk reward thing is really high, but you got to go all in, like I said. So that's why I signed with so many agencies, because it's like this. You can't just be with one. You might sit for 2 months without some big booking, And I'm in San Diego, and you got to be where the action's at, which is LA, New York, Miami. So I was driving up to LA, which is a 2-hour drive from San Diego, 2 to 3 times a week, and coming back. So it was just for auditions. So that was a major grind. So I think that there was a lot of opportunities that came, but I felt like I really was excited about them enough to be disciplined. Like discipline is so huge. And not only that, but I knew that if I'm on camera, like I got to make sure that I'm in elite shape. So it was, if you look up a before and after picture of me on Google or something, you're like, that's the same guy. That's what like a lot of people say.
Oh yeah, I saw the one where you had like long hair and
the musician
like
life,
pale and shit.
beer,
Lighting wasn't
cheese.
so good.
Yeah, I had been in even worse shape before that picture. Even I just wasn't documenting it because I felt like trash. I was embarrassed, So the modeling stuff, keeps you on your toes for sure, and staying in shape. But I think with that, it's like the main benefits of that are just your mental health is much, you have better clarity, you're more positive,
So you were out of shape for a certain period of time. Was there any reason you were out of shape? Was it because because obviously you're a good looking guy, and I feel like, there's certain people have more incentive to work out than others, if you know what I mean? Like
sure.
In your 20s, you probably didn't really have to work out that much, and you had a lot of success just dating wise, right?
No, I mean, I think from 15, I started working out, and I was eating relatively well. So it's been a long thing that, my parents were into, they had this little supplement company, and that was like one of the main things that I think I carried from my parents, is that they're really into like the Arnold generation and stuff. And that kind of passed down on me and interested in me, and it kept me out of trouble. And going to the gym was, again, a mental clarity thing. And you just, instead of all that, when you're young, you have so much angst and testosterone. It was really good to have that in my life. So I would say I've spent a great deal of time working out, but I think that everything changed when I got in the modeling industry and learned about how to get ultra shredded and all that and take it next level. But it was always a lifestyle thing for me, I guess, what I'm saying.
Okay.
Like if you don't adopt that, it's kind of like, why work out? I mean, what's your motive, right?
So for that photo, the before photo that I'm thinking of, were you just bulking or?
Yeah, I guess cheese does make you bulk. No, I had so many shoots every week that I was just burned out with work, photography. When I was doing photography, it was just because when you own your own business, it's just like you're constantly the chief everything officer. And so that was why I just had nothing left in the tank. And so work was overtaking. I had no balance in my life. That was exactly why that happened. But I also didn't know how to get in elite shape. So I could have tweaked some things and probably still been in good shape. But
so for your fitness transition, were you like a hard gainer? Because I know like I read your stats. I think you're like 6 foot, around 200 now. In your 20s, were you like skinnier? Were you leaner? Was it hard for you to put on weight, or do you gain weight naturally pretty easy?
I do have the benefit of gaining muscle pretty easily from a fairly young age. So that did give me an advantage for sure. I was leaner. I was probably 185 for a good portion of my life early on. And then in my 30s, I think I more leveled out at 195, and now just like around 200. I think if I was to get cut down again for like a cover or something, I would probably want to aim for 195, just lean and mean type of look. I mean, that's when you just want to have that 6-pack look for the shoot, and then you're like, all right, I'm over this. I want to eat normal again.
Right. Got you, man. I've always had a really fast metabolism. So, if I go a couple days without eating, man, I'll lose 7 pounds. Like Right now I'm about 6'2", 185, but like it's so hard for me to gain weight. And sometimes
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I wish I was a fat guy that lost weight. But at the same time, grass is greener on the other side, right?
Oh, for sure, man. I take the metabolism any day. Like you could always find a way to get the muscle on. It is more challenging for sure, but there is a formula. Like it can happen with diet changes and some workout stuff. But I would take the metabolism because that's what changes when you get like, I think 2 years ago, yeah, when I turned 40, was the first time in my life when I was experiencing an injury of any type, and my body not responding like it used to. And that was really hard because it's like, you can't, even though I don't like to bank my identity on how I look, just from my own history, it's hard not to think that other people are valuing me based on how I look. So I feel like I always have to be there. And then it gets in my head. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's very interesting because, obviously men and women are very different in what we find attractive in the opposite sex. And one of the advantages I feel that men do have later on in life, not initially, because, a woman until about 30, it doesn't really get even close for men, because women, they have so much attention and validation. Because men, we're very, superficial in many ways. We have like our base necessary standard of fitness and physical beauty. Whereas men, you got status, social skills, fitness, your wealth, your voice, so much more complicated. So being a model, though, you kind of almost take the role of like what many women go through, where their value is associated with how physically attractive they are. So like, what was that like transitioning into that?
It was okay because I think I'll circle back to the identity thing. Getting in the modeling industry so late at 32 was the best way it could have happened, because I had already secured my identity based on other values. It doesn't mean that it didn't still get to me, like I said, but it's definitely different than probably a majority of people that get into it at a young age, because the fact that I'm on pause with modeling right now doesn't bother me at all. Like, I don't even care. I'm just grateful for the opportunity. Don't get me wrong. But I look at careers and stuff now after experiencing losing certain ones and starting over again. You realize like, that's not who I am. It's just something I'm doing. So for me, the modeling stuff, I wanted to take away what I could from it, but it isn't all about like the looks for me. I'm maturing as well and learning right now. And a lot of my videos have changed over time on YouTube about more men's mental health stuff, because it's like, you can look great or whatever, but if you're a piece of trash, like, a woman's going to finally, that's going to come out at some point. Like, you might get her attention by the way you look, but I'm really trying to promote that message, because sure, like, guys get lured in by my topics and they want to look better and be more attractive. But I like one of my most recent videos, like how to become more attractive. The whole part 1 was just dedicated to who you are as a person, how to, be a better person, and those type of things.
Yeah, that's something I find with this podcast. And to give you more background info, I started out mostly as a YouTuber. So I did all these videos like pranks, parties, interviews, documentaries. My main thing is I want to like make films one day. So like, I love writing and acting and stuff like that, directing. But what I realized from doing all these prank videos where I'm going and approaching strangers is that a lot of people weren't necessarily watching for the humor or entertainment. They're watching because like vicariously they were living through me in that moment. Like, wow, this guy can just go and talk to anybody. He can go make friends. He can be confident around women. And that's something that a lot of guys struggle with. And that was kind of the pivot where I was like, wait a second, this is what people really need help with. But much like you just said, the real thing you need to do is like, you lure people in with like, okay, how to be a model, or, how to get really good talking to women and get a girlfriend. But once they click that and then they start consuming, that's when you go, okay, guys, it's not actually about that. It's about
the bait and switch. Yeah.
Yeah. The old bait switch.
I noticed that immediately when I watched your video, when you went down into Hastings and you're talking to that one guy, the homeless guy, and he had like the most epic rant ever. Did I get that street name right? I can't remember. It's somewhere. Yeah. And that was so amazing. But your demeanor and your body language and all that good stuff, like, to go into that is hard. It's super hard. And I've been in places as well like that where it can be so hard for most people. But I saw that the way you carry yourself is an attractive quality. And that's what I try to emphasize to guys. Like, when my current fiance, talked to me for the first time, she assumed I was a douche, like right out the gate. She's like, well, you were attractive and I don't know, you're like a model, so you're probably a douche, you know?
Yeah.
And so she was so disarmed when I was just down to earth and normal. And I felt like when you were talking to those guys in the street, you were disarming because you were good with who you were. You were like, cool, what's going on? What's your story? You know, that's lost these days. People are always trying to project something.
Yeah.
And because they want to be valued, you know, and the second you get comfortable in your own skin is when you become the most attractive, in my opinion.
All right, guys, if you need help when it comes to dating, meeting your ideal partner or girlfriend, be sure to check out the Denmo Social course. It teaches you absolutely everything you need to know to meet women in real life in the modern dating world of 2022. I have videos of me demonstrating the exact things that you need to do and so much more. I also offer one-on-one coaching and consulting, dating, social skills, meeting your next girlfriend, overcoming rejection, approach anxiety, and so much more. All the details are on the website. If you're interested, just click the link below and check it out. Book a call before I fill up all my slots. Back to the podcast. One of the things I try to teach guys is like what gets women to open up to you and be vulnerable to you is when you come off as very familiar. When you talk to somebody and after a couple minutes, it feels like you've already known them for years, right? Whereas other people, you always feel like it's just two strangers mingling together. So there really is an art to making people familiar and comfortable around you. And one of the ways to do that is almost like assume that you guys already know each other. And then that's the frame that you enter. And then it disarms them and it makes them say things without, if you can make them comfortable, then like that is what leads the interaction to go really well. Another thing I realized too from doing these videos is, so when I started out doing these pranks, I'd have like this really funny line or this approach, but the person just wouldn't react at all.
Right.
They would not notice me. It would just be too, the reality is most conversations you'll have with people are really boring, right? Like in the movies, they make approaching women at the bar look like perfect. The lines are sick. Everything's great. But in real life, dude, it's so awkward. It's kind of cringe and boring.
Yeah.
So what I realized though, in order to get views is I needed people to react. So I had to come in a way that wasn't too loud and obvious, like, hey, like, where's the camera? This guy's a little bit, this is sus. But at the same time, you can't be too nice and quiet. So there's this sweet spot where you have to get people to react. And when you get people to react, it gets good footage. But what I realized unintentionally is that when you get people to react, what is a reaction? A reaction is somebody experiencing emotional feelings and highs and lows from you talking to them, which is what actually makes them end up being attracted to you. So that was like a weird, like, aha moment.
Yeah, I could see that with the way you talk to people, is that there's a chemistry that happens at a certain moment and they're like, I feel like this guy's my friend and he's on my side, you know? And if your motives are good, that's great. I mean, that's how I am. Like, I give people the benefit of the doubt, you know? Like, sure, trust is earned, but I'm not immediately just wall up right out the gates because I'm not really threatened by everything and all these other people. And especially in the world now, one of my recent videos, I talked about that. Just the political situation globally right now, everything's hot button, everything offends people, everything gets people upset. And it's like, what if you weren't so threatened by everything for a second? Like, what if you just listened to ideas and you took away party affiliation, all that stuff? Like, what would it be like then, you know? I just think that it would open up way more conversation and connection and chemistry between people. And we probably would find a little more middle ground or agree to disagree respectfully or whatever. I
think that you were fortunate. I guess you could also say unfortunate, depending how you look at it. But like, you missed most of the social media wave when it came, like, because you were already a mature adult when like Instagram and Facebook came out. So you're probably much more grounded. I was like grade 10 or 11 when it came out. Instagram, I was probably like 19, 20.
Wow.
But now people have like, you know, they have phones when they're 7 or 8 years old. And I think what happens is they misinterpret social media, particularly like Instagram, with real life. And, you know, all these highlight reels people are posting, all this status. And I think bullying no longer ends in the classroom. It's ongoing because there's the group chats and the social media. So there's a lot of FOMO. But I think because of that, you now have like the young generation, like I'd say 18 to 30, are always like the ones going to protests. They're always the ones that are most vocal. I remember I'm still like around that age, but like you have so much energy and testosterone in your body, and you don't really understand the world yet. So there's so much emphasis on everything's about you, and you have to tell everybody your opinion.
Passion.
But traditionally, that age group, they didn't have social media. So now you have all of that plus this massive social media thing. And then there's a lot of people that are now socially awkward because the schmovid thing, and then the, nobody leaving their house, but also online dating. And then people are much more likely to stay in on a Friday and consume as opposed to like initiate a hangout. So all these things boil down to way more people being on the internet and having a lot of insecurities. And I think that they tend to want to pick a side to be on, right? Because then they have an identity. When you have no identity, you're like, you know what? I'm a woke liberal now. And then I get to slam dunk on, people on the internet. I just started watching the video earlier today. I didn't get too far into it, but you were talking about the downfall of society and, the I agree with the current thing culture. What are your thoughts on that? Like, what do you think is the biggest thing going on right now with young men and young women that's not good?
I think it's what you touched on, and I think Rogan has touched on it, and I think Elon Musk has touched on it, like that symbiotic relationship between you and your phone and that mobile device world that you live in, and then the tribal politics that come with that. So it's like once you join that tribe, you're all in, and you have almost a blind allegiance to where you can't really decipher for yourself anymore, and the critical thinking goes a little bit more out the window, and you get into a groupthink mindset. And I think that's dangerous, of course, because again, it shuts down conversation with opposing ideas. The whole idea of us being a community, or the word university is unity and diversity. So it's like to be able to share those ideas without fear of rejection or fear of being shamed or completely excluded from society. That's super dangerous, right? Like it's just not, it leaves no room for other people's opinions in space when everything is so volatile. So I think the current thing is just, it's like you said, when you're in that 18 to 30-year-old bracket, for the most part, a new hot button issue is coming down the news pipe like every 2 weeks. And you're like, yeah, that fires me up. And you get so passionate, right? And you feel so justified. Yeah. But in the process, you're really like, you're making it kind of about you to some degree. And that's kind of what my video is about. Like, it's not like, I think that when you get to a place where you're not threatened by other things and your identity's in a good place, you can weigh these different arguments. Like I follow on social media so much left and right and middle and everything, because I truly want to take in all the information and decide for myself. But what I'm scared of is just an authoritarian, totalitarian type of setup where it's like my opinion is considered inciting violence, or my opinion is hate speech or something, when it couldn't be more from, like, that couldn't be further from the truth. Like, that is not what I'm about. I'm absolutely peaceful. So that's what I think is the current thing about the downfall of society, because this trajectory right now is reaching such a boiling point that I think people don't want to understand each other anymore. That's scary,
Yeah, that's a good point, man. I one of my guilty pleasures too is I follow some of the, extreme beliefs on the left. Like, I don't agree with them, but I just I wonder what those guys are cooking, like what's going on in their head.
Yeah, for real. It's not good.
I found a whole section on Reddit of people that think Johnny Depp was in the wrong and Amber Heard is a hero, right? So I'm I'm trying to see the logic in the arguments, but
and that whole thing was a distraction too, from bigger issues going on in the world. It's like whatever happened with the Epstein trial and Ghislaine Maxwell and all that stuff. Where something like that is that should be the forefront of our attention, where we can all come together and agree that those are horrendous things that were done to children. Yeah. So, but we're over here oh yeah, Johnny Depp, Amber Heard. And it is very alluring because it's just interesting. It's very interesting.
That's the truth.
But it's a big picture, right?
Yeah, as humans, we're such a sucker for negative news. We go into fight or flight state. Our brain is this seems alarming. We have to pay attention to this because it could threaten our survival. So that's why news headlines are always this many people got shot, this person got arrested. It's always controversial stuff. One of my friends,
good news doesn't sell. Yeah.
No, good news doesn't sell. One of my friends, she was working for sustainable, environmentally friendly laundry detergent company. And her job was to run the social media and like post daily uplifting news and content about the environment.
Sure.
But all the sites she would go to, it would just be like, this animal went extinct. This animal went extinct, you know, oil in the ocean. It was just 90% negative shit.
No, absolutely. And I don't know if that'll ever change because money makes the world go round. And if you're a news entity, you got to show profits, you know, and so the fear-based stuff can be really tough, especially when it's fear plus divisiveness, which is what I've noticed too.
That's a good segue. The money thing, you know, as somebody that I guess you consider yourself an artist, at a certain point, you must have realized like, man, like I really want to do this art thing, but the more I lean into art, the less I lean into money, because it's very hard to be able to turn your art into money. Like, you know, the music industry isn't what it used to be. I'm sure the modeling industry hasn't changed as dramatically, but you know, how did you stay mentally strong during those times where you're like, wow, I really want to make a living doing this artistic stuff, but at the same time, like, you know, the cost of living is so high in California. Friends of yours are starting to settle down, get mortgages. And, you know, as people get older, they're much more attracted to like, well, how much money do you have versus how cool is your music, right? So like, how did you balance that, especially as you got older, like kind of really staying committed? Did you do things on the side, or did you just truly, you know, get into a mental clarity by just religiously exercising every day, so that you were so calm, you're like, okay, even though everything's on fire, there's no money coming in, I can still do this?
Definitely not. I will confide and say that like depression was always like on the back burner for me. I don't know if it was genetically predisposed. Anxiety, you know, I would wake up just afraid of everything that I had to accomplish or do. I'm very task driven, and I feel like that's where I generate some of my own self-worth. Like it's not about anybody else. It's like I need to produce something to have more value, and then I have peace to go relax, have a glass of wine, or do something I want to do. And so when I would have these dramatic shifts in careers or instability, anything, I guess instability is the key thing that always scares me the most. I grew up kind of in an unstable childhood, so I think that's probably where that all came from. So I always wanted to just like chart my own course and make my own way and never rely on anybody. Like I just had to do it all on my own. And so I put this massive demand on myself, right? And so when things didn't go my way, absolutely I got anxious, or I got depressed, I got down on myself. But after realizing, if you can realize, if you're younger listening to this, don't worry, like you could start over at 40 and still crush it. Like you're going to have opportunities along the way. But the key that I've always held on to is that I have to be ready for that opportunity. I don't always know what it is, but if you focus on how you're wired, if you can figure out how you're wired, what are the things I like, what are the things I'm always drawn to, what are the things that I'm curious about learning or getting into, and at least take that initiative to do that, it will lead you to these things. Like I had opportunities come, but I didn't necessarily fall entirely into them. I really like almost set myself up for those things to kind of get in my path along the way. And then you put in the work, right? But you can only put in so much work until you burn out. And again, like it's not, the identity thing is the key along the way. Like, remember, you're you, no matter what. Things will come and go. Money will come and go. You'll work it out as long as you stay disciplined. But I always did have a plan B. Even if I was doing creative stuff, I always had my bread and butter that was bringing in money, right? When I was playing in a band, unlike some of my other band members, like I was working at Midway and making great money. You know, I was making those both work along the way. When I was doing photography and then modeling, I was starting to entertain that. I was still committing to a certain amount of contracts of photo shoots until the modeling picked up. Like it's never like I was crazy reckless, you know? Yeah. And I was married too. So I'd like, obviously, like I want to be a faithful husband and I want to provide. So I couldn't be completely reckless and independent, you know?
Yeah, I guess that's the big thing that people miss out on nowadays, because, you know, like you were very patient about it. There's a lot of advice nowadays where people go, no, you can't, you can never have a plan B and a plan A at the same time. You have to only focus on one. But, you know, you only hear that from people that actually made it. You never hear it from people that like went plan A, crashed and burned, and everything fell apart. and didn't go that way. So, you know, that's a good lesson to hear. And that's something I recommend too. I've definitely been reckless at some points, but I've always had my bread and butter. What would you consider, you know, to be like a rock bottom moment? One of your biggest like bouts with depression or anxiety as an adult? Like, where were you like, man, this is it, I'm done? And then how did you get through that?
It was definitely divorce. Like when they say divorce is worse than death, in my experience, having lost multiple people, I agree, because it feels totally different. And so you, again, identity. If you're married, I was with my ex-wife for 15 years. You start a business together. You have friends, family. You have memories. You have photo albums. You have all these experiences. And then suddenly it all shifts and you have to reinvent yourself and start over on a lot of those fronts. And so that was by far my rock bottom. And I remember being in the mud and trying to pick myself up out of that. And it was too hard. Like I had to give myself grace to just grieve it. Like I had to really feel those feelings, as rough as they were, and go to counseling and seek out therapy to like figure out how I'm wired. Like the more you understand yourself, the better you can navigate all the peaks and valleys that are going to come with life. It just equips you in that way. And then surround yourself, obviously, with some solid people. But that was by far my rock bottom, because I think I had made 27,000 that year when I did the first year of modeling, and I really tried to just say goodbye to photography. Like that was when I did get more reckless, and I was like, I got to make this work, but it really wasn't yet, you know? So that was rough, because I put that number and I was like, wow, as a man, especially in Southern California, that's nothing.
Right.
So yeah, to go from that to a totally different scenario is, you don't know what you're capable of until you go through it. But it is those things that build character. It's those things that have to happen for you to get next level. So you can't necessarily let them define you or make you think that's the end. It's the beginning to something else is all.
That's very useful, because like as I've gone through experiences, I remember like first heartbreak when I was like, I don't know, a teenager, early 20s. And then, you know,
those hurt.
Fired from your first job. Even like middle school, you get, I don't know, I was a bad kid. I got suspended for like doing random shit in school. Same. You know, when a grandparent passes away, a parent dies, there's all these just really earth-shattering, painful experiences you go through.
Yeah.
I try to always hang out with people older than me, because they've actually done all the things I have yet to do.
Right.
I know a lot of guys that have gone through divorce, and, you know, they say the same thing. So in your situation, though, you were going the entrepreneurial route of modeling, not necessarily broke, but your financial thing was fucked. Your relationship was fucked. Your whole social status and circle was all tied to your identity as, you know, Weston and this person together. So that was fucked. And then at the same time, you probably thought, okay, well now, like, if you have nothing to show for yourself in your 20s, you still have all this time, but you're probably like, man, like, I'm 33. This isn't working. Like, you know, everything kind of fucking hit at the same time.
Absolutely. It was a tidal wave of stuff, you know. For everyone's got a story that's worse, but when it's your story, it's real, and it does matter, and it does hurt, you know. But I also realized that I had been codependent my whole life. And I think a lot of people are like, I was always trying to be in a relationship. I was always trying to have some sort of romantic connection with another human. I couldn't just be okay on my own. And when I had to be for years, you know, before meeting my current fiance, it was like, that's one of the best things that I had to go through, just to be good on your own. Like, I don't know if a lot of people take that time to do that, because they see, again, grass is greener. They go, at this age, I should have achieved this or had this happen in my life as a milestone. And when it doesn't, they're like, oh, something must be wrong with me. Quite the opposite. I think that having been married young at 23, I learned a lot, obviously, and I matured a lot because of that, but I was also stifled because I could lean into that other person for so many other things versus being totally on my own, in my own thoughts, doing my own refinement with therapy, maybe on my own or something. Like, you can prepare yourself to be a 10 for someone during that time, right? And I don't mean it's all about looks. It's just, I saw some other YouTubers say, like, if you want to attract a 10, like become a 10, you know, like put in the work to be an amazing future partner for somebody,
Right.
and it'll fall in your lap for sure, because people can't wait to introduce you to somebody, you know?
Got you. So I guess you had to just, as an analogy, like most people in life, they have a bunch of vices that keep them going.
Mm.
I about a year and a half ago, me and some buddies, we did this challenge. It was called Nothing November. So we gave up alcohol, caffeine, sex, social media,
Yeah,
masturbation, smoking weed, TV,
sure.
everything, right?
Yeah.
And you know, even recently, I gave up like junk food and caffeine for a couple weeks.
Like monk style, huh?
Exactly, yeah. But I remember a couple days in, dude, I was fucking miserable. I was like, oh my God, like there's no joy in my life. Then I realized how many people are actually like at their base machine level, like really miserable, but every day they have just enough little vices to keep them going. Like, okay, well, they get to watch that show, or they get to play the video game with their friends, or they get that coffee in the morning, you know? So when you remove all of that stuff, it's so sobering, but
Mhm.
like you do go like, man, like because your whole life you're doing all those things. And then when you pull it
Yeah.
all back, now it's like, wait, so I have to learn how to be happy just on my own. And, you know, but once you do become that, it's pretty game changing, right? Because then you're happy with nothing in the rain. I still feel like though it's never permanent. There's always cycles, right? Like I'll always have
Yeah.
a rock bottom and I'll go through like, yes, I'm on the come up again. And then life's just like, nah, you got to chill out.
And I think that's the takeaway, right? Is to know that, like, okay, well, I've lost everything in the past, so bring it on. You know, like whatever comes at me now, I know I'm equipped for it. I don't feel like I don't have a handbook to read as I get through it. It'll be different probably, but I think that in those moments where you're just alone, you do realize that we have some sort of escapism we go to, or we self medicate to just get through the entire day. Like whether you said we start with coffee and then you call a friend on the phone, get some of their energy, you know. But I do think one of the most productive ways of having escapism in that is like, you know, us talking right now, your energy is awesome and it's making me feel great, you know, to connect with you. It's a pure thing, right? It's not really, there's nothing negative about it really, right? Unless you are a very negative person and you're bringing me down, right? So
Right.
I think that as humans, we're really designed for community, and this whole thing going back to the social media and stuff, that is one of those parts of society that could really cause a downfall is the more we get disconnected. You know, there's something about like face to face, even though this is virtual, that accounts for a lot more than just being in that isolated scrolling
Yes.
situation, you know.
Dude, I mean, I plan on coming to California in the near future. I was there for a bit. So I'll go to Arizona seasonally to just film for a couple weeks for my content.
Well, hopefully not
We
in the
went to,
summer.
yeah, Newport Beach. We stopped by there because I was helping
Nice.
this guy with a startup app. But dude,
Cool.
eventually, like, ideally, I would be doing this in person, man, because it's so fun. Like,
Yeah.
what's the point of running your own business if you're alone all the time?
Oh,
So,
for sure. I get that too. As we do some similar things with filming. I mean, I'm looking into cameras and I'm speaking to thousands of people at certain points with YouTube or social media, but I never see them, you know. Not really. So
yeah.
it's like I don't get a lot out of that, you know. It's tough.
So how different was your 20s and 30s in regards to dating? And because, you know, one of the things that I'm always preaching to people is that, you know, your 20s, a lot of people think they peak in their 20s and they think of the glory days as like, oh, like, you know, university or partying or like Euro trips and stuff. But in reality, like if you work in your 20s and you set up all these skill sets, your 30s is where you really shine. So when you
Yeah.
did transition back into dating, maybe before your fiance, like what was different about it? And like how much easier do you think it was in your 30s than it was in your 20s meeting people?
Because I had been married so long and I kind of skipped my entire 20s being single, I did experience a lot because with photography, we would travel a lot internationally and stuff. So I still got to kind of get cultured and things like that. I wasn't totally out of being around people in social situations, luckily. But, you know, being, I think, 32 or 33 after my divorce and being single was already super weird because I built a life with someone and I thought that was going to be the rest of my life. So approaching dating, I was extremely, like, the standard was so high because I love my ex-wife like I always will, and she's an amazing woman. And because of that, I'm going to look through a different lens than maybe someone that's 21 in terms of what I'm going to expect from the other person for those expectations to be met between the both of us. And I was lucky, like almost everyone that I dated, even though maybe the connection wasn't totally there, the time I did spend either on dates or whatever, I seemed to gravitate to good people, and that was nice. But I think that it was easier because I knew who I was. Again, I felt like, I mean, it didn't mean that I thought that I arrived. It just meant that I was like, so here's me and here's what I do, and take it or leave it, not like
Right.
with an attitude. But I think that if you carry yourself with that confidence and that you are comfortable with who you are, again, it will do all the work for you, because you'll probably be more apt to listen to them, which they're going to appreciate, because you're not waiting for their sentence to end so you can talk all about yourself. And I know that women, that's a big thing, that, they want men to listen to them and to understand them and to get to know them and take that genuine interest. So that made it easy. Like on dates, I felt like it was just so easy because I genuinely was like, oh, it's great to me. Like, what are you all about? What are you into? It was really that helped. But the hardest part was, again, the standard. Like I wanted this chemistry and connection to match what I thought would be worth a lifetime together, because I felt like that would be a requirement with how hard marriage is. And you see the divorce rates, like,
Right.
I'm really trying to go in the second time being really critical. Not that my ex-wife didn't have what it took. It's just marriage is truly very, very challenging. I would imagine it's the most challenging thing besides being a parent, which I've yet to experience.
Right. So, I imagine like your first wife, you guys are probably the same age. And, because of that,
like 3 years younger.
Yeah. So very similar culture,
Mm-hmm.
you knew all the reference points. But I guess as you got back into things, you probably, were dating women, 5 to 10 years younger than you, like women in their
Mm-hmm.
20s more so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's a really good balance too, because there's this chart about men and women and what they're attracted to as they get older. And women, essentially, they always want like a 2 to 5 year buffer zone each year as they get older. But men, it's like the opposite. They want like the reverse buffer zone. But from what I've gathered, women generally want somebody that is much more experienced, much more of a leader. They've kind of come into their own, because men, we mature much slower.
Mm.
Women are far more intelligent at a younger age than we are. And for the most part, like, this is one of the things men usually miss out on, because I think what happens is there's like a certain age where women they don't want to chase the the fuck boy, the player guy as much, because it's heartbreaking. So they tend to compromise, settle down. They look more for like stability and stuff like that.
Yeah, play it safe.
Yeah. And what happens is, guys, just as they start to get their shit together, all of a sudden women are super nice to them, and boom, they're in a relationship, they're committed,
Mm-hmm.
and that's that. So like they never really come into their own, because there's that misconception that as they get older, like things are harder on them. But you have examples of guys like you that come out on the other side, where like all of a sudden your life is set up, you've fully matured. Because I feel like, obviously I'm a lot younger than you, but I haven't even really fully realized what I truly want in life yet. So that's a disadvantage, especially when it comes to meeting people, especially, careers and whatnot. Yeah,
because your career impacts your lifestyle greatly in a lot of ways, especially if you're traveling a lot and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're dating someone, they might think it's really fun and exciting and interesting at first, and then maybe they're like, well, I just figured eventually we would do this, and I figured eventually we do that. Yeah. And it looks like in my experience that relationships are just have always been, whether they're business or personal, just about the expectations. Like, so it's got to be set early on, or it's really tough. But I think what you hit on the nail on the head was just saying, like, I don't even know exactly what I want to do for sure yet. Yeah. That's the opportunity that's so amazing to be in, because getting you dialed and figuring out how you're wired and just being in that sweet spot, again, that's the goal. If I were to go back in time, that's what I would focus on. Just being the best version of me yet, like just trying to be the best version of me, and not looking at milestones and markers from other people's lives and comparing, doing my thing. And I really, truly believe that, like, you will have a collision course with your soulmate, or at least a very compatible person, you know, that you can spend your life with.
So flipping the script here to acting and modeling, I never really wanted to be a model, but I love the idea of acting. How tough is it to transition into the acting industry? Because I imagine, like, you know, I know you've done a bunch of commercials, you've done a bunch of ads, you have the look for many different roles, but, you know, do you want to be an actor? Would you want like larger roles than just commercials and kind of model-esque acting positions? Or do you like that niche where you just do 2 or 3 lines in a commercial? Like, what are your thoughts on the acting thing?
Well, I suck at acting. Let's just put that out there first. Like, I honestly, like, I would love to be good at acting. I admire actors so much, like Daniel Day-Lewis, and I feel like, or Christian Bale, like I just saw him in the new Thor, and he's just exceptional, right? And so that's alluring, you know, like it'd be so exciting to sit in the theater with your friends and family and go like, watch, I'm in this role. I'm the God Butcher, you know, in this new movie.
Right.
And so I think that's alluring and all that, but I quickly found that I struggle with it. It's really hard. I think I'm just too mental, and I didn't put in the work when I was younger. I did get better at it. I always got better at it, but I think it's an extremely vulnerable thing to pursue, because Hollywood is very cutthroat. You're very expendable, and people are nice to your face, but they are looking at you in terms of your status, what you can do for them, and if you can get them to the next level. So if you don't bring it, like, you're dead weight and you're out of there. So for me, I just think that I don't want to be in that environment long term, and that's why I never relocated to LA. Over 10 years I stayed in San Diego, because it was more important to me to preserve who I was. And I felt so much darkness, and I felt an energy drain whenever I went into LA. People were nice to me again on the surface, but I can smell bullshit. It's like, it's obvious. And so for me, I knew that I wasn't super good at acting. I'm fine with that, right? Like, it's all good. There's other things I can do. And I was just grateful to have worked in the modeling industry, and doing the commercials and stuff is really cool. But I would say the aspirations for me are to have the best quality of life as possible, and whatever that vehicle is, that's what I'm into. I think maybe if I was younger and my ego was still a little bit more in play, I'd be a little bit more drawn to be a star. Like, I would be more committed to that. I did take acting classes quite a bit, and I did get better, and I would never discourage someone to do it. I would just say, make sure your identity is rock solid before you go into that world, because it's not going to be, it's going to be really hard to navigate if you're like a really genuine, down to earth person, because you really do have to kind of like navigate sharks in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are other types of ways to like express yourself and go into that realm, like voice acting, you know, like there's a lot there. I've done a little bit of that, and, you know, you have an amazing voice, and obviously I don't know if you've already done it, but I would think you could easily do that. But, you know, there's other forms besides like that total A-list level. But when I saw Chris Hemsworth in the recent Thor, I was definitely like, dude, what a badass. Like, he's just, because he's funny, he's cool. Yeah. And it's just like a humorous role on top of that. And like, it was an awesome.
That's a good point you brought up. I'll touch on that quick. The sharks thing. That's something I realized too, as I built a large following. I started to realize that I was just a status symbol to people, right? You know, the same way that like many women models in particular, they're sex objects to society. Like, wow, this is a beautiful thing. You know, the male equivalent of that is like success object. So like you know, oh, you have this many followers, you have a check mark, you get this many views, right? And then people do treat you differently, both civilians, so I guess like your normal everyday person, but also like I've been around a lot of very quote unquote famous people, and it is very cutthroat. And ironically, one of the ways to be successful, especially in acting, YouTube, Instagram, the social media world, is you have to be very Machiavellian. You have to have a lot of dark triad traits. You have to be somewhat narcissistic, sociopathic. Yeah. It's very weird because when you're raised, especially in Canada, like I was raised to be such a nice guy, like never screw anybody over, never cheat, plagiarize, steal, or, you know, just always be very wear your heart on your sleeve, right? But that's not how the world works. And it's a very bitter pill to swallow. It's a very humbling experience where you're like, fuck, I really need to like if I'm going to try and get into this world, I have to play this game too. But it goes against all your own values. It's very tough.
That's
I think what a lot of people do is they just become evil for a couple years, and then once they make it, they're like, "Hey, I'm a philanthropist now." You know,
right? For sure. I mean, yeah, when you're in LA, it's do or die. Like a lot of people put a lot on the line. So I always respected that. It wasn't like I didn't understand their motive. I knew that they had a short period of time to elevate to where they needed to be with stardom. So I get it. Like I totally get it. I just knew that it wasn't me. And again, I've had some of the most amazing experiences with modeling and traveling the world and doing different things. But I'm good now. Like if I still get job opportunities and stuff, but again, I'm looking for more quality of life. So I think it depends on if someone wants to pursue that, they need to realize again, how much their lifestyle will change and how, if they value other things that are maybe more traditional, like living in one place for a while they really like, or being with someone in one place and have some sort of sense of stability, you got to really think about that with that type of career for sure.
Right. Something you touched on with the voice acting thing, it is something I've always wanted to do. I did one commercial for Toyota, but I never really found a way to like get more clientele, because like I do have the voice and I have the numbers online, but I never really knew how to break into that industry. Like I would love to do narration all the time. So how did you get into that? Was that one of those things where you accidentally stumbled into it as well? Or did you like actively go like, hey, I need somebody to connect me with agencies that need vocal work done?
I Googled a little bit and I saw that most voiceover artists had a reel that was maybe 1 minute to 2 minutes long, just a compilation of little splices of their best takes. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, well, I haven't done a lot of work yet and I don't have those crazy clients. What if I not only look up commercials and just take that copy, print it out, and read, over it, read those lines. I don't even know what the commercial was like. I just found stuff where the wording looked like it made sense because I didn't want that to color the way I performed. And then I printed that out. And then I had already been writing music for film and TV, like wanting to do that for quite a while. And so I had this library of just instrumental tracks. So I just put those really low into Logic Pro, and I made like a reel that was like 1 minute to 2 minutes long. And I tried to fake it till I make it type of approach. I tried that approach. And eventually my San Diego agency, I saw that they had a voiceover department. And because I already had a good relationship with them from the print work and modeling stuff, they took me on board. So I've done a few jobs each year, and that's kind of how I did that. But again, I was ready for the opportunity, and then I was like, wait a minute, they have a voiceover, department.
I'm in the position where I'm going to start pitching TV show ideas to networks, and it's a similar strategy. I'm just going to make some reels, some presentations, and then find the right people to send them to. But I think I like that idea of like just splicing together some clips into a reel and then Googling voice departments of agencies. And then, so you obviously had a connection already, but you would probably recommend like just emailing all these voice companies like, hey, my name is Jack, here's my reel, I'm looking for voice work.
Absolutely. And I think that, if you hit up just enough, you'll get one to maybe at least acknowledge you and you're on their radar. And maybe they say, we kind of have someone on the roster that already is in kind of your vocal range and tone. So maybe not right now, but we'll keep you in mind. But to get on the radar is important. But I just haven't delved into it yet. But I would say like the first thing I would do if it was me again is I would literally look up a YouTube video, because it's going to be whatever's the most relevant in the industry at this moment. That's what I want to know. And then I'm going to go take that advice and I'll probably put my stuff on a site. But having the reel is a huge part that would help. And it is acting. That's what I came to find out. I'm like, this is really acting. Like you got to really get into it, and you have to really be versatile as well. So make that reel not crazy all over the place. Like you're doing little weird character voices all over the place. Mm-hmm. Try to find that zone where you're in. And I would just do what you do. Like that's what I did. Like low, kind of like this resonance, and I chose ads that I thought would fit me that I'd probably get booked for.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Jack Daniels, Gillette,
Gillette
razors, yeah.
At what point do you feel like, you're in your 30s, you did your video game career, and then you did photography, and then you got into modeling, and then you went through that brutal divorce. At what point did you like get your shit back together and you're like, you know what, finally I have income coming in, doing what I actually want. Now I can go, okay, let me invest in menswear. Let me, just pay somebody to edit my YouTube videos. Like, what age do you think you really like everything just clicked and you're like, okay, now I'm at a really good, stable point?
It's never happened. It's not, no, honestly, like I want to be completely real with you guys. Like,
yeah,
it's not, it's never there. I hope that it's there soon, but when you start a menswear line at the beginning of a pandemic, everything from that point is going to be different than what anyone else has ever experienced. It's an unprecedented climate to enter into starting a business, right? So it's been a lot of ebbs and flows. Like I've had months where I think I'm in that spot, and then I'll just have a series of things out of my control that I can't do anything about, like a supply chain issue, getting certain fabrics for certain denim. I'm designing a piece and now it's not going to come out till next winter instead, or I can't get a restock for however long. And all my customers are like, so this has been out of stock for a year. Are you in business? So there's just a lot of stuff that is I've noticed is the same theme from way back, even though it's not a pandemic thing at the time. And I think that I'm okay with it. Like, I don't like it. I want to respond to you and just say like, I'm cruising now. Like I'm just loaded, but it's not the case. And I think that's because everything I pursued has been major risk reward type pursuits. And with
like
that
art almost. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, designing clothes is a form of that, and doing it without any investors and putting everything that I've worked for and own into that, to every cent, but it could lead to, I believe it's going to lead to that, to where I'm not even worried about money ever again. Right. But I think I'm in a spot where it's just, there's a lot out of my control, as with many people that lost their businesses for good. So I'm just keeping that in mind. And I'm like, hey, at least I still have the opportunity or potential to make this huge, and all the markers for success are there.
Right.
Once the things that are out of my control can flip, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I really resonate with a lot of what you do, Weston, because when I was a kid, I was obsessed with like art, drawing. I wanted to be an animator.
Nice.
When I was like 12, I was making animations on YouTube and I was getting lots of views. And then my computer crashed, high school started, and I was trying more so to like fit in and do that. And then I went to trade school. I hated it. I was very depressed.
Same.
I wanted to be a musician, much like you. Okay. I wanted to be a musician, but it was very hard to get everything together, and the market wasn't there like it used to be for music. And I was kicking myself. I was like, man, what if I just stuck with YouTube when I was like 12 or whatever? So I started again at like 22, 23. Everything took off. But then all this, status and popularity and I guess, fame, which really sounds douchey to say, but like it came with it. But then I realized like that's not who I ever wanted to be. And even now, like I want to make movies, I want to make music, I want to do like a million different things like you, but they're all very high risk, high reward potentially. And balancing them all is such a big issue for me, because I feel if I just chose one, I could really make it work, but I just am drawn to be doing multiple things at once. So, in order to balance everything, I have like somewhat of a psychopath schedule, I find. So I imagine that you might be a little bit more laid back now, but assuming that you were doing photography, modeling, music, you're reaching out to different agencies, you're doing voice work, like you must have had no time to do anything besides work for like years, right?
Sort of, because, early on in the podcast, when you said, some people are like, you can make it work no matter what, you can just go all in and just focus on that one thing and it'll happen. And I think that there's like the Gary V type people out there that really are wired that way, and good for them. Like that, they have that ability to just do anything it takes and just kill themselves over it. I never went that far. I still valued life enough to where I would find balance. I'm like, I need to go on a vacation, or I just need to chill and play Call of Duty for like an hour. Like I didn't feel like I really like my passion, the ebbs and flows. That's where I'm different now. Like that passion has transitioned into more like, all right, well, money gives you options. So I'm like, I'm going to pick something that will free up time for the thing I really want to do and take that pressure off. That's kind of what I think is, again, that's why the plan B thing is always there, right? But I would say that I've been in those spots where I just felt like my schedule is like a zoo. Like, what is all this stuff? I'm like, I'm all over the place. And if my energy is shooting off in all these different directions, how can I really progress on anything? And I think it's all right to be jack of all trades, master of none, if your ego doesn't matter. If you're having a good time, in my opinion, by being a jack of all trades, you can find out what you want to be a master of eventually, because you might go like, this is what I really am into. I just didn't realize it. Like, I think fishing lures, being out everywhere, is a way to explore career paths, and there's definitely nothing wrong with that. However, being disciplined and having a little sense of time management is definitely going to be in your favor as a creative. I know how that is. It's just hard to stay focused when you're like, "Ooh, that looks interesting. That looks interesting." But what I've realized is, like, I'm going to be 43, like I said. What if I had said no to a lot of that stuff just because I was like, no, it's got to be this right now? Like, I thought that it had to be a musician. That was going to be what I was going to do. I set myself up for failure and major disappointment. My lead singer, he died tragically, and we were in the studio for our biggest album yet, and that we had been together for 11 years as a band. Everything was put into that moment to do that, and it all ended instantly, right? So it's like, you don't know what life's going to throw at you, and you don't know how hard it's going to be. And so, again, think it's not so important to get so attached to an idea of like, this is what I got to do. So I think giving yourself grace and just being like, you know what, I'm just figuring out how I'm wired right now. Like, I'm just figuring out like what is going to be, I'm going to be most magnetic to over time. And
that
that's
maturity,
all right.
to like kind of give yourself grace, at what point do you think that came? Probably like in your 30s, where you're just like, you know what, I got to chill a little bit.
Yeah. The divorce definitely did it, because it was the reset button. So it was like, to get zero to hero is going to be a long haul, so
Gotcha. Okay.
But humility is a gift, it's just so huge, because ego will drive you to places that you just get let down by, because the motives aren't really that great. Like, if you, like, early on, like, helping people is extremely rewarding, connecting with people is extremely rewarding. So emphasis on career, I think, for men can just be really overinflated. Like, I just don't think that it's everything. Like, be a good person first, figure out how you're wired, be humble enough to know that you don't need to be an A-list star to be successful. Your impact on your inner circle, let alone your massive audience, like, it's just as important, one or the other.
When you were in that real building phase, obviously you take your vacations, you play an hour Call of Duty here and there, but like, your ideal super productive day, what is your schedule? Like, what time do you wake up? Do you go no phone until 5 p.m? Are you working out first thing in the morning? Like, what is the perfect productive Weston Boucher day? And not now, when things are a little bit more laid back, but like when you were in like that real growth phase in your past couple of years.
I've still kind of operated in the same ways, to be honest. I do want to get back to journaling in the morning, because I felt like it gets my anxieties out, my fears out, and I get to a place where it's like a brain dump, and then I can start my day. Like, I'm glad I said it out loud to you, because now I feel more accountable and maybe I'll actually do it again. That's a great way to kind of start the day. But I haven't been doing that. And I think that I'm in a spot right now, a season where I am being taught something right now, because I don't feel a total sense of peace with where I'm at, because I'm taking on more than I can handle. Again, my menswear line alone is a monster, and I didn't realize how much work it would actually be. So I wake up around 7 at the moment, and then I typically will try to work out first if I can. I don't want to get on my phone or on my laptop, but I do see my phone for any time sensitive things. I got to always watch at least for email. So I'll just kind of like look over the preview of them, but I won't open it.
Yep.
Just because of my role in the business right now. But
work out till, like 9 or so. And then what? Like you start to get your shit?
Yeah. I try to get my workout done within an hour. I don't do like an hour 45 like I used to when I was just going crazy hard. And then I get back, try to have like a Whole Foods type of meal if I can, because I'm trying to fuel myself so I can think clearly, I can feel good, and then I don't just waste my workout by putting trash in my body right after, right? Yep. So I try to do that during the week, and then I cut loose on the weekends, for that balance, in terms of diet or drinking and stuff. And get on my laptop. I'm working remote most of the week, but sometimes I'll go to my like headquarters, which is about 20 minutes away, where all my stuff is stored, and I have my office. And
so you have like an office?
Yeah, to house all the different pieces. And then also, like yesterday, I was there most of the day doing a fitting with my developer, because I'll get new samples and I gotta try them all on. We gotta talk about measurements, changing fabrics, what colors we're gonna do for that piece, when we're gonna launch it. Mm-hmm. So that yesterday felt really good, because I interacted with my developer Annie, and her energy is great, and those
you got to work with another human for the day instead.
Yeah, those are definitely my better days. It's the screen stuff in isolation. After she left, I got on my laptop and I was like, I saw the monster amount of emails, people needing things from me, and me feeling like I don't want to let anybody down. So I'm just like putting that pressure on myself. So those are the days that are better, but for the most part, it is remote work. And then if I do a YouTube video, I actually feel a lot better too. Or I do an Amazon Live broadcast, because it's interactive. There's like a chat. Most of the time, when I'm at least feel like I'm contributing something to the world, if it's anything but the email stuff.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, everyone knows that's kind of like, that's the hardest part. So my most productive day is I got a good workout in, I connected with another human being, I produced something of value that can help other people or solve a problem in the world. And then maybe at the end of the day, I can just, relax, play guitar or something, or
so you finish work like what, 6,
5 usually. Like I really don't, I'm realizing now that hours don't equate to productivity. 100 million %. Like if I have a super productive day and I just knock out 4 hours, sometimes I'm like, I got it done, and I don't need to prove anything to anybody else. I'm my own boss. Like I always thought that I had to just 8 to 10 hours no matter what. It depends, it doesn't necessarily mean, especially in a creative field, that you're going to produce your best work.
So during those hours, you're like, no phone, no distractions, no fucking around, just ripping coffee. And
like even if my family tries to call me or friends, there's no chance I'm answering that unless it's an emergency. But yeah, usually coffee, and just put on some good music and power through with my AirPods in or something. And then the days where I do half days, usually on Wednesdays, and I go play beach volleyball. I got into that a few years ago because I never played sports, and that's like one of the best things in my life right now. It's just so nice interacting with people.
Camaraderie with other people, man.
Camaraderie, yeah, and they're great people, and I'm in nature, on the beach, so it's like a win-win. I think this last year I was like, I need to get back to the stuff that fills me up and that I enjoy. Like I grew up riding dirt bikes. I wanted to get back into dirt bike riding. And I like video games, and I don't feel bad about playing them as long as it doesn't overtake my life. I grew up, around in the industry and stuff, getting back to music, guitar. So I think for people listening, get back to the stuff that you liked when you were a kid, and has maybe something you didn't necessarily outgrow, but it was who you were. And then you became an adult, and adulting just suppressed all that stuff that really piques your sense of wonder and imagination. Like get back to that. Like that really can fill you up in ways that you don't realize.
Yeah. I guess the key is do less so that you can do more. In regards to like, things that are taking away your energy and focus throughout the day, but also do things that bring you enough joy that it gives you the clarity to make good decisions and stay focused. So like if you didn't work out in the morning and you didn't have, let's say, a opportunity to see other people throughout the week, you'd probably go nuts. You'd burn out. The depression would sink back in. So those are like the main takeaways I would say.
Human being versus a human doing,
Yeah. Ooh.
The workout is, that's
a good quote, dude. Human being versus human doing. As far as like your business goes, where do you get most of your traffic from because you offer consulting, you have your menswear line, you have like agents, I suppose, for your modeling, which that's a whole other thing. But like, where does most of your traffic come from?
I did start getting more active on TikTok and I've had some videos trend, but I would say YouTube probably. I think I'm getting close to like 119,000 subscribers right now. And for me, having been kind of lazy, not lazy, but I don't really put out that many videos. I feel like every time I do a video, I definitely see like an uptick in traffic. And obviously, you know how it is when certain ones trend, it will just like catapult your following quite a bit. Instagram is insta sham in my opinion. Like whatever they've done to the algorithm for the last 2 years is trash. And like I feel like if I'm irritated that I take the time to try to create some sort of valuable content and they just throttle and suppress all the engagement. I don't know what they're trying to do, but it's just making me want to go to TikTok and making me want to spend more time on YouTube and all that, because I feel like I'm spinning my wheels. So yeah, long story short, I think the traffic's from YouTube.
We definitely gotta, connect more and do more shit like this, even off air. But this was awesome, dude. So we'll talk a bit after too. But where can people find you? What are your closing thoughts, bro?
Just at Weston Boucher. My menswear line is just my full name, at Weston John Boucher. But you could find me just through that one. I like to keep it simple. Or westonboucher.com. Like all my links to everything I do, kind of just body work type thing, would be there. And like you said, I'm on TikTok, I'm on YouTube. All my long form videos are on YouTube. Amazon Live is just all about, products that I love, that I genuinely own and love and use. So it's just totally different. But yeah, my menswear line is westonjohnboucher.com. I have a ton of great pieces coming out. I design my line for me. So I've worn all the brands under the sun. So my goal is to bridge designer brands with affordable stuff. Attainable luxury is my goal. So if you guys ever want to check it out, that's the goal. Just make style easy for guys, because I want it to be for me. But closing thoughts would be, like I said, find out how you're wired and just be okay with you. Be comfortable in your own skin, and a lot of stuff will work itself out. And don't put your career on the totem pole too high, because it's not really who you are. It's the person you are.
Got you. Human being versus human doing.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Oh, I can't thank you enough. Appreciate it, Jack.